Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and salam sejahtera to everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I am Iffah Fadhilah Binti Alambuaina, metric number 1712526, going to be presenting a video presentation on urban green infrastructure solution for street, guidelines for low-cost housing community in Pangsapuri Sri Impian, Ukay Perdana. As stated by Nazir in 2014, green infrastructure becomes an attraction for the house buyers to buy or invest in the housing property due to the nowadays awareness of their future environment preference in living. So, without further ado, I will explain first the background of the study. This study covers the street design and its network that focus on improving the sustainability of low-cost housing community. Due to the expeditiously urban development, people that live in a specific area has to live with a less balanced ecological system. Thus, by implementing a green infrastructure, social and environment connectivity will be contribute to people and natural habitat. However, before come out with the literature reviews, the issues on urban green infrastructure, especially in low-cost housing area, have been identified. Firstly, human settlements and the changing land use threaten the lack of integrated natural ecosystem as the wildlife corridors. Second, there are insufficient pedestrian and cyclist paths. A path that connects places in low-cost housing communities exposed directly to heavy traffic routes. Thus, the local communities are affected by harmful impact pollution due to its heightened level at the road edge in very dense urban centers. The third one is limited to green infrastructure. A lack of green infrastructure and green network and its maintenance mostly due to the income constraints. This problem thus affect the local community's mental, physical and social well-being as there is no encouragement of physical activities. Moving to the next slide. This literature review will be focused more on the subject of urban green infrastructure, low-cost housing in Malaysia and sustainable low-cost housing development. The first subject of urban green infrastructure defines its planning as an approach that aims to create a network of multifunctional green spaces in the urban environment. Interlinked with it, green infrastructure is a planned and managed system with conservation value to maintain a natural ecological process. However, green network focuses on the flow and movement of social, biological and physical environment functions of green spaces and their interactions. Consequently, green infrastructure network is a connected green spaces by. Next, on the subject of low-cost housing in Malaysia, there are 4 policies to be acknowledged as low and middle income housing. The first policy is that it requires all private developers to construct at least 30% of low-cost housing units component. Secondly, the house built under the low-cost component can be sold only at a price not exceeding 25,000 ringgit. Next, buyers of the low-cost units must have a combined household income not exceeding 750 ringgit per month. Last but not least, the policy specifies that each low-cost house must have a minimum built-up area of 550 to 600 square feet comprising 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen and a bathroom. Moving on to the next subject, in regards to the housing as a basic human need, it must provide a comfortable feeling to create a sustainable living. Thus, sustainable low-cost housing development has come up with 4 main criteria which are in ecological sustainability. It explained that any development activities should not provide more waste and pollution that can bring damage to the natural environment. Besides, economic sustainability stated that it must be affordable and accessible for the beneficiaries and local authorities responsible for maintenance services. Whereas, on behalf of social sustainability, it must promote a sense of community and safety that contribute to the physical and psychological well-being of the inhabitants. The last, sustainability low-cost housing development criteria is it must use appropriate technology for specific situations so that the users of the technology can carry out ongoing maintenance to achieve technical sustainability. Thus, to achieve the aim of the study, which is to identify the guidelines for the street as a green infrastructure network in a low-cost housing community, there are three main objectives to be followed. First and foremost is to identify the good characteristic of a green infrastructure network to fulfill local community well-being and needs. Secondly, to identify the types of green infrastructure elements to improve the movements of physical activities. The third one is to implement a green infrastructure network that connects ecosystem and community through a system of hubs and links. To fulfill this aim and objective, there are three types of methods that have been used throughout the study, which are literature review for a secondary data, semi-structured survey interview, and site observation for a primary data collections. For the methods of literature review, a gathered or referred data that included the reviews on books, journals, etc. on the main subject of urban green infrastructure and low-cost housing concept are analysed to achieve the first and second objectives, while by undergo site observation which to identify the current condition of green infrastructure on the street and the study area itself in Pangsapuri Sri Impian, Ukay Perdana, the second and third objectives can be fulfilled. The last method that aims to accomplish the first and third objective is semi-structured survey interview. The interview technique with 5 respondents of the local community in Pangsapuri Sri Impian, Ukay Perdana through questionnaire to encourage them answering spontaneously. Next, there are results and findings. They are the most crucial stage before developed with a design recommendation at the end of the study. The application of urban green infrastructure on the street has been identified into 3 categories. The walkability and connectivity cover on the connection and accessibility of the pedestrian network to amenities and services that comply with a barrier-free design. The next one is an integrating natural boundary that can be used as a buffer for visual and noise pollution produced by the motor vehicles from the street. Urban tree canopy and planting strips are examples of a natural boundary that can be implemented along the streets. Last but not least is by implementing a green network. Green parking with the elements of permeable pavements, planter boxes, and bioswales enable the infiltration of stormwater runoff. As shown on the slides, there are examples of the application of urban green infrastructure that covers on the street, which through the method of site observation, a current condition of the street in the study area has been identified. It is shown that most of the street in the housing area is not in a state that benefits the community's well-being. In contrast, no pedestrian accessibility connects within amenities and services. Although it is located with the walking distance, other than that, the current street condition needs to improve a lot in terms of green infrastructure and green network. Next, as a design recommendation is the last stage of the study, a design layout of urban green infrastructure on the street has been proposed. In the street in low-cost housing area, integrated paths that barrier-free design that reduce vehicle speed also functions to connect community centers and housing area in a within walking distance. A green network in the parking area with the implementation of permeable pavement and the shaded tree can reduce urban heat island effect. Planting trees that maximize shading of pavement increase and improve public space and green areas. The next one is a proposed street design layout that comes out with a natural boundary as a buffer and maximize shading through the application of urban tree canopy. It also acts as greenway that helps the movement of natural habitats. The streetscape along the pedestrian walkways help in improving public spaces and green areas. With the use of reduced emission materials on the street and urban tree canopy, it can reduce urban heat island effect. Plus, the use of catch basin function for water runoff. Also, a transit system should be designed within 10 minutes of walking distance. In conclusion, urban green infrastructure in low-cost housing should be acknowledged to fulfill a local community needs and well-being.